The glass of wine slipped from my hand and shattered across our kitchen floor. Red liquid splashed across the white tiles like blood at a crime scene. But I barely noticed. My eyes were glued to my husband Richard's phone, which I'd picked up by mistake when it buzzed with a notification. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again tomorrow. Our little meeting will be worth the wait. Your wife has no idea how lucky I am. I'm Victoria Bennett, 34, a high school English teacher married to Richard Bennett for 8 years. We'd met in college, built a life in Boston, and I thought we were happy. Until 10 seconds ago. The message was from Melissa C. Marketing, with a professional headshot as her profile picture. Except the conversation I was staring at wasn't professional at all. I scrolled up, my hands shaking. Explicit messages, secret rendezvous plans, complaints about me. 3 months of conversations between my husband and his colleague. Victoria? What happened? Richard called from the living room. I quickly placed his phone back where I found it and grabbed a dish towel to clean the mess. Just dropped my wine. I called back, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane inside me. My fingers trembled as I picked up the larger glass shards. 8 years of marriage. Countless dinners I'd cooked while he claimed to be working late. Birthday gifts I'd spent weeks selecting while he bought hotel rooms for another woman. Need help? Richard appeared in the doorway, concerned expression on his face. The same face that had looked me in the eyes this morning and said, "I love you," before kissing me goodbye. "I've got it," I replied, keeping my head down so he wouldn't see my eyes. "Just being clumsy." "You sure you're okay? You seem off." I stood up, forcing a smile. "Just tired. Long day with the juniors. Romeo and Juliet always drains me." He chuckled. "All that teen drama. Come sit down when you're done. I want to run through my speech one more time." Richard's company gala. Of course. The annual event where he would stand in front of colleagues and executives to deliver his keynote as sales director. The speech I'd helped him perfect over the past week. That night, I lay beside Richard in bed, staring at the ceiling as he slept peacefully. How could he sleep so soundly while I was drowning? His phone was charging on his nightstand, password protected now. Had he noticed me looking at it? Was he being careful? Or was this just his normal routine? Keeping his affairs securely locked away while his wife remained in the dark? I slipped out of bed and padded to our home office. The document was right there on our shared computer. Annual Gala Keynote, final version. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as an idea took shape. For years, I taught my students about Shakespeare's clever plot devices. The letters, the miscommunications, the dramatic irony where the audience knows what the characters don't. Maybe it was time for a plot twist of my own. The next day, I went through the motions of normalcy. Made breakfast. Kissed Richard goodbye. Taught my classes. All while my mind raced with what I was about to do. "Mrs. Bennett, are you feeling all right?" One of my students asked after I'd zoned out mid-lecture. "Just a little distracted today, Emma. Big event tonight." "Oh, is it your anniversary?" I nearly laughed. "No, just my husband's work thing." When I got home, I headed straight for the computer. I opened Richard's speech document and began carefully replacing sections with actual messages he'd sent to Melissa. I worked meticulously, making sure the transitions seemed natural, keeping his introduction and conclusion intact. The middle, however, became a carefully curated selection of his betrayal. The success we've achieved this year is built on passion. Would now lead directly into his message. The kind of passion that makes me think about you even when my wife is in the room. I saved the document and closed it. Then I printed a copy for myself, just in case. That evening, as I zipped up my black cocktail dress and applied my lipstick with extra precision, Richard came up behind me. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing my neck. "Tonight's going to be perfect." I met his eyes in the mirror. "Yes, it certainly will be." "Nervous about my speech," he admitted, adjusting his tie. "But I've practiced it so much I could do it in my sleep." "I'm sure you'll give everyone exactly what they deserve to hear," I replied. What Richard didn't know was that I'd already emailed his updated speech to his work account with the subject line, "Updated version. Use this one." In 4 hours he would stand in front of his entire company and read his own infidelity aloud. The ballroom of the Hyatt Regency glittered with crystal chandeliers, and the forced laughter of people who spend 40 hours a week together pretending to like each other. I smiled tightly as Richard introduced me to colleagues, my eyes scanning the room for her. I spotted her by the bar, tall, leggy, in a red dress that hugged every curve. Melissa Chun. In person, she was even more beautiful than her profile picture. I felt a stab of inadequacy, quickly replaced by cold fury. "You okay?" Richard whispered, squeezing my hand. "You're quiet tonight." "Just taking it all in," I replied, sipping my champagne. "Don't worry about me. Tonight's your night to shine." He beamed at me, completely oblivious to what was coming. "Have I told you lately how lucky I am to have you?" The irony was almost too much to bear. "Victoria, have you met Melissa from marketing?" Richard's voice snapped me back to the present. He was leading me right toward her, his hand on my lower back. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure," I said, extending my hand. My voice didn't betray the rage burning in my chest. "Victoria, Richard talks about you all the time." Her smile seemed genuine. She was either an excellent actress or Richard had compartmentalized his life so thoroughly that she believed I was oblivious. "Does he?" I matched her smile. "How interesting." "Only good things," she assured me, her fingers briefly touching Richard's arm in a gesture that would seem innocent to anyone who hadn't read their messages. Richard looked between us, a flicker of nervousness crossing his face. "I should check on the presentation setup. Excuse me for a minute." As he walked away, Melissa sipped her champagne. "He's been working so hard on tonight's speech. He's nervous, but I keep telling him he'll be amazing." "Oh, I'm sure his words will make quite an impression," I replied. "He values your input so much. He told me you helped him practice." I nodded. I certainly did. Every word. The company president clinked her glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Dinner will be served shortly, after which our sales director Richard Bennett will deliver our keynote address." At our table, Richard fidgeted with his note cards. I checked the teleprompter. "Everything's loaded and ready." "Perfect," I said, squeezing his hand. "Just like we practiced." Throughout dinner, I barely tasted the overpriced chicken. I watched Richard and Melissa carefully. Their interactions seemed professional on the surface, but I caught the lingering glances, the subtle ways their hands avoided touching when passing the bread basket. A deliberate effort that actually highlighted their awareness of each other. "You seem distracted," whispered Anna, my friend who worked in Richard's company and had secured us seats at her table rather than at the executive one where Richard would normally sit. "Everything okay?" "It will be," I replied. "Just wait for Richard's speech." After dessert, the company president returned to the podium. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. Please welcome our sales director, the man behind our record-breaking quarter, Richard Bennett. Applause filled the room as Richard kissed my cheek and strode confidently to the stage. I sat perfectly still, my heart pounding so hard I was sure the people at our table could hear it. Richard adjusted the microphone and flashed his winning smile. "Thank you, everyone. What an incredible year it's been." He started strong, following the original introduction I'd helped him craft. He thanked the leadership team, acknowledged his department's hard work, and shared impressive statistics about their performance. Then he reached the modified section. "The success we've achieved this year is built on something deeper than numbers," he read from the teleprompter. "It's built on passion and connection." He paused, squinting slightly at the screen. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, but he continued. "A connection that makes me think about you first thing every morning and last thing at night," he read. "Even when my wife is sleeping next to me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Richard faltered, then looked back at the teleprompter, clearly thinking he'd misread. "The stolen moments in the supply closet on third floor have been the highlight of my otherwise mundane marriage," he continued, his voice growing uncertain. People were shifting in their seats now. I glanced at Melissa, whose face had drained of color. "Your body drives me wild in ways Victoria's never could," Richard read, then stopped abruptly, finally realizing what was happening. He looked directly at me across the room, his expression shifting from confusion to horror. I'm not sure what's." He looked down at his note cards, but they only contained his introduction and conclusion points. The middle section, the one I'd replaced, was only on the teleprompter. Perhaps I should continue, he said, attempting to regain composure. He looked back at the screen. Your body is everything my wife's isn't. When you wrapped your legs around me in the hotel last Tuesday, I forgot my own name. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. The company president stood up, looking alarmed. Melissa sank lower in her chair. I didn't, Richard stammered, but his eyes kept returning to the teleprompter, reading ahead in growing horror. I'll leave her after my promotion comes through, he read, his voice barely audible now. We just need to keep this quiet until then. The company president was making her way to the stage. Phones were out recording. Melissa had disappeared from her seat. I remained perfectly still, watching as my husband's career and our marriage imploded simultaneously. Victoria. Anna whispered beside me. Did you know about this? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My calm in the midst of chaos was answer enough. What Richard didn't realize as he stood frozen on stage was that I'd been recording the entire speech on my phone, and his confession was already being uploaded to the cloud where his parents, my parents, and our closest friends would receive the link within minutes. What the hell did you do? Richard hissed as we drove home in deafening silence. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Me? I didn't do anything, I replied calmly. Those were your words, Richard. Every single one of them. You went through my phone. His voice was low, dangerous. I didn't have to. You left it unlocked on the counter yesterday. Melissa's message popped up while I was making dinner. He slammed his hand against the dashboard. Do you have any idea what you've done? I could lose my job. I turned to look at him, incredulous. Your job? That's what you're worried about. Not our marriage? Not the fact that you've been sleeping with your colleague for 3 months. Richard pulled the car over abruptly, tires screeching. It wasn't serious. It was just what? A mistake? A moment of weakness that happened to repeat itself for 3 months straight? His face contorted with anger. You had no right to humiliate me like that. And you had no right to make vows to me and break them. I replied, my voice breaking slightly. You had no right to make me feel like I wasn't enough while telling me everything was fine. Richard's phone buzzed incessantly. Text messages from colleagues, from Melissa, from his boss. He ignored them all, staring straight ahead. The president asked me to take a leave of absence. Effective immediately. I'm sorry about your job, I said, surprised to find I actually meant it. But I'm not sorry for exposing the truth. He turned to me, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. Why like this? Why not just confront me privately? Why destroy everything? Because you were never going to tell me the truth, I said. I confronted you 6 months ago when I found lipstick on your collar. Remember what you said? That it was from hugging Janet from accounting at her retirement party. I believed you. I apologized for doubting you. Richard looked away. That was different. No, it wasn't. It was the same pattern. You lie, I believe we continue. Except I couldn't do it anymore. When we got home, Richard stormed straight to our bedroom and slammed the door. I sat in the kitchen, scrolling through the responses to the video I'd shared. Most were messages of support, expressions of shock, offers to help. My mother had called 4 times. I didn't want to talk to anyone yet. I needed to process what I'd done, and what would come next. The bedroom door opened, and Richard emerged with a duffel bag. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Running to Melissa? I asked. He laughed bitterly. Melissa won't even answer my calls. You destroyed that too. You destroyed it yourself. I corrected him. I just turned on the lights. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and finally allowed myself to cry. Not delicate tears, but ugly, body-racking sobs that left me gasping for breath. 8 years of marriage, undone by messages on a screen. I scrolled through our photos on my phone. Our wedding day, where he'd promised to love only me. Vacations where we'd made memories while he was messaging other women. Christmas mornings and anniversaries. All now tainted with the question. Was he with her those days too? The next morning, I woke to a pounding on the front door. I wrapped myself in a robe and shuffled to answer it, expecting to find Richard. Instead, Melissa stood on my doorstep. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked to the living room and stood awkwardly, clutching her purse. "I didn't know he was still sleeping with you," she said finally. "He told me your marriage was over in all but paperwork. That you were staying together for appearances until after his promotion." I laughed hollowly. "Of course he did. He told me you two hadn't been intimate in over a year. That you slept in separate bedrooms." "We made love 3 days ago," I said flatly. "And we've shared the same bed since we got married." Melissa closed her eyes, absorbing this. "I shouldn't be surprised. The things he said about his ex before you weren't true either. I realize that now." "Let me guess," I said. "She was controlling? Emotionally unstable? Wouldn't let him be himself?" Melissa's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Because that's what men like Richard do. They rewrite history to make themselves the victims." "I wouldn't have," she started, then stopped. "That's not true. I still would have. I wanted him. But you deserve to know the truth." "And now everyone knows," I said. Melissa nodded. "Including my fiancé." This caught me off guard. "You're engaged." "Was," she corrected. "James found out from a colleague who was at the gala. He moved out this morning." I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a strange kinship with this woman. We'd both been deceived by the same man. "Richard's been placed on indefinite leave," Melissa continued. "I've been transferred to the Seattle office. It's effective immediately." "I'm sorry about your engagement," I said, surprising myself. She shook her head. "Don't be. James deserved better. So did you." After she left, I checked my phone. 27 missed calls. Texts from friends and family wanting to make sure I was okay. An email from the school principal requesting a meeting to discuss recent events. My public revenge was having very real, very public consequences. For everyone involved. What I didn't anticipate was that Richard's company would launch a formal investigation into workplace misconduct, uncovering not just his affair with Melissa, but 2 previous relationships with subordinates at his former company. Information that would change everything about our divorce proceedings. 3 days after the gala incident, #Richard's betrayal speech was trending on Twitter. Someone at the event had recorded it on their phone, and the video had gone viral. My inbox was flooded with interview requests from news outlets and podcasts dedicated to relationship drama. I declined them all. I hadn't exposed Richard for fame or sympathy. I'd done it because after 8 years, I deserved the truth to be acknowledged. My classroom became my sanctuary. The whispers followed me through the hallways. Teachers gave me sympathetic smiles. Students suddenly found new interest in Shakespeare's betrayal themes in Othello, which we happened to be studying. The meeting with my school principal had gone better than expected. Mrs. Gonzalez was understanding, even supportive. "Your personal life is your business, Victoria," she'd said. "As long as it doesn't affect your teaching, we have no issues here." "Thank you," I'd replied, relieved. "Teaching is all I have right now." She'd squeezed my hand. "You have more than you realize. Half the faculty has been singing your praises for standing up to a cheater. You've become something of a folk hero around here." I was grateful for the normality of my classroom. My students knew something was happening. Teenagers have a sixth sense for drama, but they respected my privacy. I hadn't heard from Richard since he'd walked out with his duffel bag. His absence was both a relief and a strange new wound. The silence of our house echoed with the ghost of what we'd once been. That silence was broken when my doorbell rang on Friday evening. Richard stood on the porch, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt I didn't recognize. "Can I come in?" he asked. "We need to talk." I let him in, maintaining careful distance between us. We sat at opposite ends of the couch where we'd once cuddled watching movies. "I've been fired," he said without preamble. The company's investigation found a pattern of inappropriate workplace relationships. "Melissa wasn't the first," I said. "It wasn't a question." He looked down at his hands. "No. How many?" 3. Including Melissa. I absorbed this like a physical blow. Not just a one-time affair, but a pattern of behavior throughout our marriage. There was Melissa, Richard continued quietly. Before her, my assistant Jenna, about 2 years ago. And before that, Sarah from the Denver office, when I was there for that 3-month project. The Denver project. When he'd called me every night saying how much he missed me. When I'd surprised him with a weekend visit, and he'd seemed oddly distant. Your speech video has over 2 million views, Richard continued. I can't get interviews. No one will touch me. What do you want from me, Richard? Sympathy. He shook his head. I want you to take it down. To tell people it was a misunderstanding. I stared at him, incredulous. Are you serious? You want me to lie to protect you after everything you've done? I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. What you did was a choice. Multiple choices over and over again. Richard's face hardened. If you don't help me fix this, I'll lose everything. You already have, I said quietly. He stood up, pacing the living room. I've spoken to a lawyer. If you don't take down that video and issue a retraction, I'll sue you for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I laughed, actually laughed. Sue me? With what money, Richard? Your company credit card was canceled. Your reputation is in shambles. And in case you've forgotten, we have joint accounts. The messages were private communications, he argued. You had no right to make them public. Then take me to court, I challenged. Let's add a lawsuit to the public record. I'm sure that will help your reputation. Victoria, please. No. I cut him off. I won't take down the video. I won't issue a retraction. What happened at that gala was the truth, and you know it. Then I want a divorce, he said, as if it were a threat. I've already filed, I replied. The papers will be delivered to whatever hotel you're staying at on Monday. Richard's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw past his anger to the fear beneath. He was losing everything, his job, his reputation, his marriage. And he had no one to blame but himself. I loved you, he said softly. Despite everything, I did love you. Maybe you did, I acknowledged. But not enough to be faithful. Not enough to be honest. After he left, I opened my laptop and stared at the viral video. My finger hovered over the delete button for a moment. Then I closed the browser. The truth had cost us both dearly, but living in a lie had cost me more. The next morning, a large envelope arrived by courier. Inside was a USB drive and a letter from Richard's company's legal department. The drive contained evidence from their investigation. Text messages, hotel receipts, emails between Richard and not just 3, but 5 women over the past 4 years. The letter explained that as Richard's spouse, I was entitled to this information for my divorce proceedings. The company was distancing itself from Richard completely, making it clear they had no prior knowledge of his behavior. But it was the financial documents that truly shocked me. Expense reports showing Richard had charged hotel rooms, dinners, even jewelry to the company, disguising them as business expenses. Thousands of dollars of company money spent on his affairs. I called my lawyer immediately. This changes everything, she said after I explained. With this evidence, we can push for a much more favorable settlement. And if he fights it, we can show he was using marital funds for his affairs as well. He also threatened to sue me, I added, for sharing the video. My lawyer scoffed. Empty threat. No court would side with him given these circumstances. He knows that. For the first time since finding that message on Richard's phone, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not just for financial security, but for a future where I wouldn't be lied to, where I could trust again. That evening, I began boxing up Richard's things. Each shirt, each book, each memento from our travels felt like removing a bandage slowly. Painful but necessary for healing. In his nightstand drawer, I found a small velvet box with earrings I'd never seen before. Not my style, but clearly expensive. Intended for someone else. I added them to the donation pile. Let someone enjoy them without the taint of betrayal. What I didn't know then was that among the evidence on that USB drive was a series of emails revealing Richard had been embezzling company funds to pay for his trysts, a criminal offense that would transform our divorce from messy to catastrophic, and ultimately lead to the most unexpected twist in our saga. 6 months later, I sat in the back of a courtroom, watching as Richard stood before a judge for his sentencing hearing. The evidence of embezzlement had led to criminal charges. The man who once commanded boardrooms with confidence now looked small in his ill-fitting suit, shoulders hunched as the judge spoke. "Mr. Bennett, this court finds your actions particularly egregious. Not only did you violate your company's trust and policies, but you used stolen funds to finance extramarital affairs, showing a pattern of deception in both your professional and personal life." Richard nodded, staring at the floor. "I hereby sentence you to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $157,342 to your former employer." The gavel came down with finality. Richard turned, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. I held his gaze steadily, feeling neither joy nor sorrow, just closure. As the bailiff led him away, I thought about the roller coaster of the past 6 months. The divorce had been straightforward once the embezzlement charges surfaced. Richard had no leverage, no fight left in him. My lawyer had secured a settlement that left me with our house, my retirement account intact, and a significant portion of our savings that hadn't been tainted by his crimes. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around me, shouting questions. I declined to comment, pushing through to where my friend Anna waited in her car. "You okay?" she asked as I buckled my seatbelt. "Surprisingly, yes," I answered. "Want to get lunch? Process everything." I shook my head. "I need to get back to school. I have a debate team meeting." Anna looked at me with admiration. "You're remarkable, you know that? Most people would be a mess after everything you've been through." "Oh, I was a mess," I assured her. "Still am sometimes. But staying busy helps." The viral video had long since faded from public interest, replaced by newer scandals and outrages. Occasionally someone would recognize me at the grocery store or at a restaurant, but those instances were becoming rarer. My students had been my salvation. Their energy, their optimism, their drama-filled lives that made my own problems seem manageable by comparison. I'd thrown myself into teaching with renewed passion, starting a student mentorship program that connected struggling students with professional mentors in fields they were interested in. Richard had always dismissed it as a waste of time. As Anna drove, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Thank you for coming today. It meant something to see you there. Air." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset. The house that had once felt hauntingly empty now felt peaceful. Mine. My phone rang. It was my principal, Mrs. Gonzalez. "Victoria, I have some news," she said. "The school board has approved your proposal for the student mentorship program. Full funding starting next semester." "That's incredible," I exclaimed. "Thank you for your support. Your resilience this past year has been remarkable," Mrs. Gonzalez said. "The board was impressed by how you handled everything with grace. You're exactly the kind of role model our students need." After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: pride. Not just in surviving what Richard had done, but in creating something meaningful from the wreckage. The next day, I received a letter from Richard's mother. She'd always been kind to me, and I'd wondered how she was processing everything. "Victoria," she wrote, "I raised my son better than this. I'm deeply ashamed of his actions and want you to know that his father and I stand with you. What you did at that gala was shocking, but necessary. Richard needed to face consequences. When you're ready, if you ever want to talk, our door remains open to you. You will always be family to us." I cried then, touched by her kindness when she had every reason to resent me for exposing her son. I'd started dating again, cautiously with clear boundaries. I'd met a kind literature professor named David through a book club. We were taking things slowly, both of us carrying baggage from past relationships. "I saw your video," he'd admitted on our second date, "before I knew who you were." "And?" I'd asked, bracing myself. "And I thought, that woman is incredibly brave. Then we met, and I realized you're also kind, intelligent, and make terrible puns. I'd laughed. The puns are a coping mechanism. Keep coping, he'd said with a smile. I like the puns. As darkness fell, I checked my email one last time before bed. There was a message from Melissa, now settled in Seattle. Thought you might want to know. I'm getting married next spring. To someone honest this time. Thank you for forcing me to face the truth about Richard, and about myself. I hope you've found peace too. I smiled and typed a brief, genuine response wishing her well. The woman who had discovered those messages a year ago would never have imagined feeling this sense of peace. She thought her life was ending when her marriage fell apart. She couldn't see that it was actually beginning. I closed my laptop and looked around at the home I'd reclaimed, thinking about the classroom where I was making a difference, and the new relationships I was building on a foundation of honesty. Sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most necessary transformations. My public revenge hadn't just exposed Richard's betrayal. It had freed me from a life of quiet deception. And that was a speech worth giving.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.